going over and adding new things to our knowledge about what we learned on day 1. So about plants and the life cycle of plants. So can anyone tell me and read off our expectations, Tillman? Can you read off number 1?
Sit quietly.
Vivi, can you read the second one?
Be kind while others are sharing.
All right, and Ellen, can you read the third one?
Raise your hand if you have a question.
Thank you. So yeah, so sit quietly, be kind while others are sharing, and raise your hand if you have a question. So we're going to be reviewing today the parts of a plant, okay? So each group, we're going to have 4 groups, so they're going to be right here. These are going to be your groups. And so it's going to be Dawn, Bella, Tillman, and Fletcher, Amari, Vance, Valentina, Abby, and Natalie Grace, Harper, Sander, Tonsalua, Gabe, and Ella, and Ollie, Dylan, Sloan, Vivi, and Leela. So 4 groups. So each group is going to be having a flower plant, and then they're going to have another plant that's going to be either a vegetable or an herb. Can anyone tell me what an herb is? Tonsalua? Anything else, Abby?
I thought it was a type of plants.
Both. So it is a type of plant, and so herbs can be added into our meals to kind of like spice things up. They can be spices that are kind of ground down into teeny tiny pieces, but they start off as a plant.
Like some herbs like
Bay leaves, cilantro, yes, Yep, those are all herbs that we kind of put in our food to add more flavor into our food. Because if we didn't have flavor in our food, it would be kind of bland, right? Okay, so here's what you guys are going to do. So you're going to have a flower plant. Whenever you guys get your flower plant, I have already given you guys Post-it notes, and you're going to label the parts of a flower. So you have the flower, you have the leaves, the stem, and the roots. So you guys are going to place these on the parts of the flower where it is, right? So where would you put, if it's a flower, where would you put it at? Leela? Right, you would put it on the actual flower. And so you'll do that for all the parts of the plant. The second thing that you're going to do with your group is you guys are going to get a mystery vegetable or herb. So it's up to your group to determine what type of vegetable or herb that plant is going to be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Dom?
On one of the sticky notes, does it say roots? How are we supposed to put it on the notes?
So you're not going to put it on the actual root, but where would the root be at? Right, it would be underground, so you would just put it on the outside of the box, right?
Bury it?
If you wanted to bury it, you would just put it on the outside. Valentina?
So each person in the group, one person is like highlighted
Yep.
with red.
So the people that are going to be in red, y'all are going to be the spokesperson of y'all's group. The spokesperson is going to be the person that talks about what your group discussed. So you're going to say, here's our flower plant. This is where we put flower. This is where we put the stem. This is where we put the leaves. This is where we put the roots. Here's our vegetable or herb plant. And this is what we think it is. So we're going to share all together whenever you guys are done. Does that make sense, Ella?
So the ones that have brown can't talk at all?
Oh no, you guys are going to talk in your discussion and you can add things on, but the person in red is just going to kind of be the spokesperson to sum up what everybody said.
Yeah, but would we, are we going to share it with our class?
Yep, so each group is going to go, and then whenever everybody's done, I'm going to have each group stay in their seat. One group will come up at a time, and they're going to present their plans.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we
Okay, just like on the way back out.
Tonsalua,
Thank you.
can we say like something if Tonsalua didn't already say it, or
Yeah.
do we just?
Yeah, so let Tonsalua talk. If Tonsalua doesn't say something that you guys might have thought about and talked about that you might think is important, then you can add that
We're
on.
gonna stand up in the front.
Yeah, the whole group is going to stand up here and talk about it. All right, so Sander, can you go ahead and go over what we're about to do right now? What we kind of just talked about? What are we supposed to do? Yep, and you guys have to, what, with the mystery one? Dom's group, let's do it right at this front table right here. Group 1, you can go ahead and get up. All right, group 2, Amari's group, you guys can be at this group right here in the front. Harper's group, you guys can come right here in this one. And then the last group can be at that back and forth. Alright. Here you go, here's balls. Those notes.
Say that for Dr. Herb.
I know. What do you think it is?
I think. I know it is.
Stick the sticky part on whatever part it is.
Oh, we got 2.
I'm handing out the class. Hey, second grade. So what I'm handing out right now is your mystery vegetable or herb. So that's what you guys have to determine what it is.
This is not a tomato. No, you're right. Wait, no, it's not a tomato plant. Tomatoes have these right here. Tomato plants have yellow flowers. Yeah. Yeah, tomato. It smells like tomato. It's a tomato. It's not a tomato. It's not a tomato plant. It's a tomato plant. That is That's cabbage.
So something that might help you determine your vegetable or herb is smelling it. Maybe you guys can smell it and then that'll help you determine what it is.
We think that's a basil. No, we think that's a basil.
great. All right, we have our friends presenting, so let's make sure we're respectful to them while they're talking.
So, we put the root one right here, we put the flower one right here, and we put the leaves right there, and then the stem one is down here, like next to the stem. And then, we figured out that our mystery plant is a tomato plant because it smells like a tomato plant, and also tomato plants have yellow flowers like this one.
That's great. It actually is a tomato plant. And Fletcher, why does it grow flowers first? Pollinated, right? And then what happens after it's pollinated? It grows the tomato, right? Because it grows a flower first, and then it gets pollinated, and then it turns into a fruit or vegetable. Good job. Great job. All right, let's do this group right here.
I got it.
All right, hey friends, our group is trying to present.
So we said the flowers on the pink flower, the leaves is on the leaves, and then we have the stem like right here,
Mm-hmm.
and then the roots are like in this area,
Mm-hmm.
and then we think
What is it about to?
we think it's like maybe potato or like a vegetable.
You think it's a tomato or a potato? Abigail, what do you think? You don't think it's either of those?
I think it's herb.
You think it's a herb? What type of herb do you think it is? You don't know? All right. Yeah, Maureen.
I think it's a spice.
She
also guessed basil leaves.
Oh, okay. So actually, it is none of those things. It is a squash.
Oh, a squash.
So it hasn't started producing any flowers yet, but that one is a squash plant. Fletcher?
I had a mystery squash plant in my garden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of why I came up with the idea. So I made sure not to give it to you.
And we thought it was a watermelon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Movies great. All right. Baby's group is presenting, so all eyes should be on them.
We think that this is a flower, these are leaves, the roots are down here. I mean, the stem is down here and the roots are down here.
Mm-hmm. Great job.
And then the flower and
And then we think our mystery plant is either lettuce, cabbage, or spinach.
Lettuce, cabbage, or spinach. Did y'all all agree on those?
Yes.
Yep. You guys are actually right. It is romaine lettuce. So that is the type of lettuce that goes in all of your salads. It's a lettuce that a lot of the time goes on sandwiches. If you have lettuce on your sandwich. All right, our final group right here.
Stay in my country.
I want to eat it.
Let's go get
All right, all eyes should be on our last group.
We thought this is basil.
We thought it's basil. Because we smelled it, we just thought it was basil. Harper was the first one who said basil. And we all agree on that.
Yep. So did y'all all unanimously think it was basil?
Yes.
We all smelled that.
And well, Harper said let's smell it, and then she smelled it. She said, "Oh yeah, that's basil."
Great job.
Did we get it right?
So it is actually not basil. Let me see it. So this is not basil. It is an herb. Go ahead and and stand up in a line. I want all of you guys to try to guess this one. This one's a hard one. Go ahead and stand up in a line. Stand up on the edge of the carpet. Edge of the carpet. In a line. If you're cutting, I'm not going to let you. If you're cutting, I'll force you to go to the end of the line. I'll take your guesses at the very end. So don't say anything just yet. Don't say it. Don't say it. It's a nerve. It's a nerve, so it's not a vegetable. It does look like basil. Don't say it yet. All right, class. All right. Mila, what did you think it was? Garlic? What did you think it was? Garlic? What do you think? Mint? Spearmint? 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 What? We don't have anyone guessing anything different?
Mint we use like for like water sometimes. We use some things that are like mint water.
Abigail? Ground pepper? You thought it was basil. You still think it's basil?
still think it's basil.
Mint.
You think it's mint? It's not basil. Basil? Spearmint?
I kind of think spearmint. But
Shalom?
I don't really know that much of seasoning.
It's okay.
It smells so fresh. What that smell? I don't know.
You don't know? It's okay. Ollie?
I don't really know. I always like that. We used to have basil and lemon, I can't remember, so I don't know.
So this plant is, drum roll please, mint. Where's the one? So this goes in toothpaste, it can go in specialty drinks, it can go in a lot of things. Alright, hey, second grade. It just is. Hey, second grade. Alright, can I get everybody to get seated on the carpet? Alright, we are going to go over our IPMs for today. Once I get everybody seated. 1, 2, 3. Alright, just remember what type of talk we had before the lesson, right? About how yesterday's lesson went. So let's remember our expectations, okay? Alright, I can identify the steps a pollinator goes through to pollinate a plant. I can determine why pollinators are important. I can identify different ways a seed can travel. All right. identify different ways a plant can travel.
I can identify different ways a plant can travel.
So I made a little typo. I meant seeds can travel. Because plants can't travel, right?
No.
Seeds can travel though. All right. Amari?
Can you change it?
You could uproot a plant and put it in another pot or somewhere else, but we'll talk a little bit more about what I mean when we say seeds travel. All right, so we're gonna read a book. So I'm gonna sit right here, so make sure before I start reading we get to where we can see the book if you guys need to move around. All right, Sandy, can you sit on your bottom, please? All right, so this book is called Let's Investigate with Nate, The Life Cycle. Welcome to the Science Museum. Most of the time it's an ordinary museum where ordinary children have ordinary fun learning all sorts of fascinating things. But from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. every Saturday, the Science Museum is different. It's special. And the hour before it opens, the Science Museum becomes a portal to another world. In that hour, a group of children become a group of interpreted explorers. They join their friend, the museum's best tour guide, Nate Ball, and go on extraordinary adventures. You see, every Saturday at 9 a.m., Wendy, Braden, Rosa, and Felix investigate with Nate. Good morning, Felix. Hey, Wendy, what do you think we're investigating today? Hey, Braden, what do you think it's going to be? The elements, the ecosystem, rocket science? I know all about rocket science, Rosa, so I hope it's something else. I've got some bad news for you kids. I'm not sure I feel like exploring today. We were supposed to study the life cycle today. Supposed to? Yeah, I wanted to show you kids all about how living things are born, reproduce, and die. I figured I'd get things started by growing a plant from a seed so you guys could see a plant as a baby. That sounds good. But it sprouted and then died. I guess I just don't have a green thumb. Oh no, I even had a whole quiz ready for you. Name one thing both plants and animals need to live. What do almost all plants grow from? What is it called when an animal or insect undergoes major changes as it becomes an adult? What is it called when an animal or insect is born from an egg? Then it's up to us to figure out what happened to your seed. Wendy's right. Sometimes experiments don't work out how we hope. That's why they're called experiments. You guys are right. We're scientists, and it's our job to investigate the life cycle. Growing up, the series of changes in the dog's life cycle and the puppies are the next generation. So, dog's life cycle starts as a puppy, grows, gets older, and it repeats. Where are we going? Into the ground to try to figure out why my plant isn't alive. But what does alive mean anyways? It turns out that defining life is really hard. Many scientists don't agree about the exact definition, and there are some things out there, like viruses, that may be alive or may not be, depending on which definition you are using. But here's a very basic definition of life that works for most cases. Something is alive if it can get and use energy, the way plants absorb sunlight and humans eat pizza. It can reproduce, the way oak trees make acorns and dogs make puppies. And it responds to change. Even a microscopic creature like bacteria can move towards food when it appears. I love learning. This is awesome. And off we go. If a seed gets soaked with water, the embryo inside the seed coat will break through. This process is called germination. The roots will grow, and eventually the shoot will break through the soil, and the leaves will grow from it. Once the shoot becomes big enough, it becomes a stem. Buds will start to appear, and with enough sun and water, those buds will open up into a blossom. It's a seed, and the first root, and a little baby leaf. What's that part called? That's the shoot. Watch out, world. We're coming through. We're coming for you. The shoot is sprouting little branches. Now it's called a stem. And these were buds. Now they're blossoms. That was amazing. But we still don't know why your seed didn't sprout. We'll figure it out. Hey, that's a chipmunk eating our plant's berries. Yeesh, what smells? He's going to the bathroom. Gross. Not at all. That's part of the plant's life cycle. The plant wants animals to eat its berries, so that way they spread its seed to a new place. By pooping? Exactly. Pooping. So we'll pause. So what it means is, same way humans, back in the day, before we had actual bathrooms, before we actually even really had buildings, the way plants traveled from place to place is animals or humans would eat the plants that had seeds like strawberries. They would travel to a new place, they would do their business, and then in a couple months, the seeds from the plant that they ate after it digested through their body would start growing in the new area. Yeah. Isn't that weird? Yep. Alright. Hey, what's that? They look like eggs. Come on up, let's investigate. They are eggs. But what kind? A caterpillar. Female butterflies lay eggs on the underside of leaves. When the eggs hatch, caterpillars are born.
How do they find the way that
A butterfly has a fascinating life cycle. When a butterfly first hatches, it starts out as a caterpillar. This caterpillar grows and grows, shedding its skin many times, and when it's fully grown, it forms a chrysalis.
How are they in the chrysalis? Are they in the chrysalis or are they in
So you see them, they're kind of in the chrysalis of the caterpillar.
How? Because they were on the caterpillar.
Yep. It's really, really dark in here. We're never gonna get back in the museum before it opens again. Nate, what's going on? Nature, the caterpillar is undergoing a transformation into its adult state. Who knows what that's called? Anybody? Amari. It does transform into something different. Joshua? Yep. I remember metamorphosis. Then it transforms from a caterpillar into a butterfly. That's right, it's part of the butterfly's life cycle. And now the butterfly will lay eggs on another leaf, and the exact same thing will then happen again. That's why they call it a life cycle, because the process repeats and repeats over and over and over again.
What if they don't have butterflies?
Hmm?
What if they don't have butterflies?
I think Ms. Phillips will teach you that more whenever we talk about butterflies later on. Amari?
How are they metamorphosis? Is the butterfly in the caterpillar?
I think we'll talk about it more when Ms. Phillips talks about caterpillars. But that's kind of like whenever we were talking about the pumpkin seeds yesterday, how the pumpkin grows into this big thing. We carve out the pumpkins in Halloween. We can take those seeds, plant them again, and then it'll grow a new pumpkin, right? That's the life cycle. It just keeps going and going and going and going. Oh no, those butterfly eggs are underwater. I don't think those are butterfly eggs. Rosa is right. Butterflies lay their eggs on the underside of leaves, not lily pads. So what kind of animal would lay its eggs on the water's edge? That's a great question. What kind of animals live in water and on land? An amphibian. Hop on, guys. We still have a lot to learn, to explore, and we only have 10 minutes before the museum opens. Butterflies aren't the only creature that undergo a metamorphosis. Frogs do too. Female frogs lay eggs in the water. Those eggs hatch into tadpoles. The tadpoles grow legs, and eventually they become froglets, which is nearly mature frogs. The frogs eventually absorb their tadpole tails and become what we think of as a mature adult frog. Then those frogs will either lay or fertilize the eggs that will hatch into tadpoles. So,
Okay, so this might be a little weird, but I think like it's kind of like people like first like
you start out as a little embryo.
and then you get bigger and like it's kind of falls.
Yep. And
We also have
and y'all will talk about that in 3rd grade, which y'all are just a little while away from. Some animals and insects like butterflies hatch from eggs. That's called oviparity. Other animals are born alive. That's called viviparity. Humans are born alive. Almost all mammals are, like chipmunks. It's so cute. They must have been just born. They look like little mini chipmunks. That's because they are little mini chipmunks. Exactly. Some animals and insects don't look like what they'll eventually grow up to be, like butterflies. But others are born looking like similar versions of their adult selves, like humans and chipmunks. There's an amazing variety of life. There are plants and animals, oviparous and viviparous living things, and creatures that undergo metamorphosis, and ones that are born looking sort of like they'll be when they grow up. How do scientists keep track of it all? Taxonomy is the science of defining and classifying different things and non-living things. Many consider the Swedish botanist Carl Linnaeus to be the grandfather of modern taxonomy. He grouped things by their characteristics from life all the way down to the individual species. Kind of like whenever we talk about the animal kingdom, kind of similar to that. The beautiful thing about taxonomy is that all living things share certain essential characteristics. We all get and use energy, we all reproduce, and we respond to change. And the 5 of us, all living around, are going to take it back to the museum just in the nick of time. But we can't return, we still haven't figured out what happened to Nate's plant. Oh, but I think we have. And from the looks of your plant, it wasn't near a window, so it wasn't getting enough sunlight. Or it wasn't getting any sunlight. Phew, back in the nick of time, but we never figured out why seed didn't grow. Oh, sorry. Looks like it didn't get enough sunlight. That's right, and no sunlight means no energy. That's sad. Remember the definition of the life cycle? Sure, every living thing uses energy, reproduces, and responds to change. Yes and no. Remember the strawberry that the chipmunk ate? It had hundreds of seeds. They can't all germinate and grow. We'd be overrun by strawberries. Sometimes things die. It's really nature's way of keeping balance and making sure that life can continue. I honestly don't think I could ever have too many strawberries. Well, maybe that's the next thing we'll investigate. When we investigate with Nate. Try to talk with your shoulder partner. What is something that stuck out to you about the book? Hey, second grade. Alright, so I'm going to start calling on you guys using the sticks. So, and I want you guys to tell me what you and your partner talked about. Sander? You don't know?
Yeah,
What y'all talk about?
we didn't just we did, but I just don't know what I
Okay, remember our expectations that I went over before the lesson started and when the lesson started? So we should be remembering our expectations, right? Alright, Valentina, can you share what y'all talked about?
Me and Dylan talked about when Nate said his plant was dead, we didn't know why it was dead. And then in the end when they said sunlight, we said, well, we didn't know it needs energy actually to grow. I thought it it doesn't need that much. And then we also learned if you like animals when they eat and then they
the squirrel and the chipmunk thing. Tillman was just came up to me and was talking about that. All right, Harper, what did you and your partner talk about?
So we talked about like the caterpillar and
Mm-hmm. Yep. And kind of how caterpillars plant their eggs underneath the leaves, right? That's very cool. Ella?
Me and Layla, we talked about, so we, were with like Mountain and Dylan. It was kind of disgusting when we heard like the poop part and they poop out seeds.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What if you eat seeds? Oh,
It
like
just-
sunflower seeds.
Yeah, so if you eat the seeds, they'll just digest through your body, and then, whenever you go to the bathroom, they'll just come out. That's like people say whenever you're young and you're little, not to eat watermelon seeds, because a watermelon will grow in your belly, right? Have you guys ever been told that? I was told that when I was little, but that's not true. Yeah, so it just goes right through. All right, so we're gonna begin our lesson, learning new things, so make sure you get where you can see me if anybody needs to move. You're good, Fletcher?
Me and Tillman also talked about that, like, what modern taxonomy means.
Yeah, so that's kind of like, it's kind of like all the life cycles, every life cycle all together. So you know how you kind of talk about the animal kingdom?
Yeah.
How we talk about, insects and bugs might be at the very bottom, but like humans or lions and tigers might be more towards the top. Kind of similar to that. Okay, so seeds can actually travel one of the ways through water. So this is actually a coconut. You can see it traveling in water. So if a coconut tree is close to the water, it drops in the water, swims a little bit in the water, floats around, ends up on the shore, gets planted in the sand, and then a coconut tree starts sprouting out again. That's how there's so many coconut trees along the border of water, because water also helps it travel. Dylan?
I have two things. The water that helps you travel and why they're always by the water.
Mm-hmm.
That's why there's lots by the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I didn't know a coconut was a seed.
Mm-hmm. Yep, a coconut is a seed. Yep. Dom?
Picture of the white flowers. I forgot what those flowers are.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so we're actually about to begin with that. Dandelions. Dandelions are a part of our way seeds can travel. All these little things, all the little hairs that stick up out of a dandelion, at the very inside of it, where it's connected to the plant, is a part of a seed. So when the wind blows really harshly, it disconnects from the plant, blows a little bit, lands on the ground, gets planted, and then another dandelion starts growing. That's why whenever you see so many dandelions in a yard around this time, it's because in springtime, the wind blows so much, it blows them around and then gets planted. Yeah.
I picked those up and just blow them.
Yeah, see?
Same.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep, that's the way they can travel. Valentina.
How can a dog? I don't have a dog yet, so I don't know how
Yep.
can a
So-
dog spread.
So I'm going to go over all these, so give me just 1 second. Dom?
Facts about my house. If there was like a competition against who had the most of those, it would probably be my house. They're all over the place.
Yeah, they're all over the place. And a lot of people hate them because they spread around and they're just everywhere. So another way they can travel is through animals and squirrels, right? A squirrel goes to the top, gets a nut out of there, takes it back down. Maybe the squirrel doesn't eat the whole nut, or maybe he drops a nut on his way down from the tree, and then it gets planted somewhere else, right? So squirrels can help seeds travel. Birds can also help seeds travel because they'll, like I know I have a blackberry bush outside my house, so it'll pick the blackberry bush, and then it will, while it's flying, maybe some of the seeds will drop down, and then they'll start growing somewhere else. Dogs and humans also can help seeds travel because, have you ever noticed if you're walking and there's a lot of tall grass where you're walking and seeds can get stuck to your pants, or with dogs, they can get stuck to their fur. So if something gets stuck to your pants or your fur, you walk a little bit, as you're walking, they fall down, they get planted somewhere new. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Dylan?
Are the helicopter things seeds?
Yeah,
Like,
they are.
because I spent like 35 to 30 minutes on a trampoline getting these helicopters and scrubbing the thing up and see all like green stuff. Because whenever it's around, they just start planting seeds.
Yeah. Exactly, that's a really good point. So what would be the cause of that, of it traveling? It would be the wind, because those aren't connected that firmly. So when the wind harshly blows that tree, the helicopter seeds just start going and then they get planted somewhere else. Valentina?
I don't know how everyone has maybe I still do it. However, sometimes when Dylan said the little helicopter thing, I like said, what is the two balls and like inside the little helicopter?
Yeah, they're kind of weird looking.
And then sometimes I like break the like little helicopters and then I see the seeds and I just throw them and say, they're no use. And I throw them. And then sometimes I just cook them and then like
Yep, they fly away. Ella?
So I have a lot of helicopters at my house. They're mostly all in my backyard on my trampoline or in the back of my playhouse. They're everywhere. And yesterday I have this huge playhouse, and I took a broom outside of my backyard and sweeped all the helicopters out. And I do this sometimes. My little sister, my name is Lucy. She takes the helicopters, rips them off, gets like the little seed things, and throws all over the yard. And she has this little like hole in a tree that she takes the helicopters and puts all of the little like seed things in there. And she collects.
Yeah, they kind of appear. They appear a lot of the time. They're kind of all over the place. So now we're going to talk about pollinators. So some of the pollinators that we know a butterfly is a pollinator. We know a bee. A bee is probably one of the most popular pollinators. But did you know a hummingbird is also a pollinator?
Yes.
Did you know a bat is a pollinator? Yeah. A lot of people actually don't know that bats are pollinators, because what time of day do bats usually come out at? Night. So nobody ever really sees them pollinating because they're doing it at night. But they actually are a pollinator. So they help. So pollinators are animals or insects or birds that help plants get pollinated, right, Dylan?
So a butterfly is pollinating a purple flower. A hummingbird is pollinating those flowers. The bee is also pollinating that flower. What is the bat pollinating?
So that's probably another type of flower. I'm not really sure what type of flower it is, but probably a different type of one. What type of butterfly is this? Yeah. So those are the ones that y'all are gonna see once they turn into a chrysalis and they open up. Oh, they're pink ladies?
Yeah.
Oh, penguins? Oh, I thought they were. Alright. So step one of a pollinator is the pollinator first gets attracted to flowers, sweet scent, and bright colored petals, right? So the same way we like flowers, we are attracted to the color of the petals, right? If they're bright and beautiful. And also, you smell them and they smell so good. Just like a pollinator, that's what they get attracted by first. Dom, did you have a question? Yeah.
What are helicopters?
Oh, helicopters, they're just seeds that are from like a type of tree. I'm not sure the type of tree, but they're called helicopter seeds because when they blow in the wind, they kind of go like this, and they look like a helicopter spinning.
And the picture with the white what are those things taking pieces of it?
So we're actually going to learn more about that. So wait just 1 second. So what is a pollinator attracted to?
The flower, the stem, the light.
Yep, the petals of the color of the petals and the sweet scents. So step two, a pollinator connects the flower's sweet nectar. That was the answer to your question. So that's why they're attracted to the flowers. They're connecting the nectar. The nectar is like food for the pollinators. So what they do is they stick their long tongue into the middle of the flower and they collect that nectar right there. So that's a bat collecting nectar. That's a hummingbird collecting nectar. And then that's a bee collecting nectar. So you can see, this is the hummingbird, the beak stops here. So that's its tongue right there. From here over, that's its long tongue that sticks into a flower and gets the nectar. And then that's the bee's tongue right there, getting the nectar from a flower. Yep, it's got a long tongue. So step 1 would be what? Of the pollinator.
The bright color and the scent.
Yep, the flowers,
Bright color.
the bright color of the flowers and the scent. Yep, and then step 2 would be collect the nectar, right? So step 3, while the pollinator is collecting the nectar from the flower's pollen rubs off onto the pollinator. So you see how the bee is covered in all this yellow stuff right here? You see all the yellow stuff on the bee and on the butterfly? That's all pollen. So as the bee or the hummingbird or the pollinator is collecting the nectar, the pollen from the flower, which is on the flower, it rubs off onto them. And so we'll talk about it more in just a second. But that's kind of like in the springtime this usually happens. And that's why a lot of people have really bad allergies like me and like Miss Phillips right now. Our voices are so bad because there's pollen in the air and it kind of affects us, right? Yeah, Bella?
How do they get that stuff off?
Off them? I'll tell you in just
How
one
do
second.
they get it all off?
So as they're pollinating, their bodies rub up against the flower because the nectar is kind of like in the middle of the flower. So they have to get really up close and personal into the flower, stick their tongue in there, and while they're sticking their tongue collecting the nectar, that's when the pollen rubs off on their body. Does that make sense, Valentina?
Scientists figured out it doesn't bother them or they try to fly in a certain way, doing this, flying like this to try to get it off. Does it disturb them?
I don't know. No, the pollen doesn't disturb them. They don't even really realize it's there. They probably don't even realize it's there. It doesn't bother them. They just want the nectar. They want that food, right, Amari?
I am allergic to pollen.
I think everybody's allergic to pollen.
I'm not.
You're not?
I'm not.
I swear I hear so many people allergic. All right, we're gonna go over step 1. Vance, what is step 1 of the pollinators?
Step 1 of
That a pollinator goes through to pollinate a plant.
they stick their long tongues out.
Nope. They gotta get attracted to what?
Yeah.
They don't get attracted to the nectar. They get attracted to a flower's. What about a flower? So this is a gentle reminder. Remember our expectations, right? We should be paying attention and listening. Sandra, can you help Vance out? What's the first step? The petals and what else? Not the nectar, Amari.
What color?
And the flowers, Leela? Scent, yes. So step 2 would be Bella. What would step 2 be?
Step 2.
Yep. Step 2 would be they collect the nectar, right? So step 3 would be Abby.
Step 3 would be pollen when they get attracted to a different flower and they
Not yet. So step 3 would just be the pollen rubs up against the pollinator. So step 4 would be when the pollinator gets hungry again, it goes, gets another flowers, it gets attracted by another flower's what?
Bright colors and scents.
Bright colors and scents. And it collects that flower's nectar. So while it's collecting this new flower's nectar, it rubs its body on the flower just like it did the other one. But the pollen from the other flower helps pollinate this new flower. So now that this new flower is pollinated, what do you think is going to happen?
The pollen from that flower is going to get onto them, and then they fly to the new flower.
Yep. So it just keeps repeating. The pollen goes on that bee, gets attracted to another one, and so on. So it causes the flower to be pollinated. Sandra, you have a question?
Do the bees get sick when the pollen gets on them?
No, they don't really care about it. It doesn't really bother them. All they care about is that nectar, right? Because it's like food to the bees and to the hummingbirds. They love it. Amari?
I thought bees make honey.
Bees do make honey,
Yeah, they
but they gotta eat too, right? So they eat the nectar.
eating pollen.
They don't eat pollen. They don't eat pollen. They eat the nectar from the flower. The flower produces nectar and the pollen. Dylan?
Can you go back to step 2?
Mm-hmm.
On the one to the right of the bat, is that a real flower that the hummingbird's on?
No. So a lot of people put things out in our yard that look like flowers that hold nectar and food, and so the hummingbirds are attracted to that. But it's the same. It's the same
So it has
concept.
nectar in it.
So it has nectar in it. Yep. All right. So Ollie, what's step 1?
The pollinators get attracted with the petals, the scent, or the pollen.
Not the pollen. You had it right though. It gets attracted to the bright colors of the petal and the scent of the flower. Dom, what's step 2? Yep, they start eating the nectar, right? They like that sweet nectar. Tonsalua, what would step 3 be? Yep. Gabe, what would step 4 be?
Step 4 will be when they get hungry, they go to the next flower.
And then what happens to that flower? So it gets hungry. It's already visited the first flower. So it goes to the new flower, gets the nectar, and while it's on the new flower, what's on its body that's going to the new flower?
Pollen.
Yep. The pollen gets on it. And the pollen gets on the new flower, which causes the new flower to be what?
Pollinated.
Pollinated. Say it with me. Pollinated.
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 All right.
Getting the food thing, and then nectar's on them, and then they pass it on to another thing, another flower, and then they get the nectar on that flower. Like, how do they eat?
So the pollen is just on its body. It's not on its face or its tongue. It's not making it to where it can't collect the nectar from the new flower. It's just on its body.
So like eating it, but it shows it.
So they're eating the nectar, not the pollen. So they're eating the nectar, which is in the middle of the flower, and then the pollen, which is around. They eat the nectar, and then they collect the pollen, which collecting the pollen just means it's rubbing against their body.
So collecting pollen, like it's like same thing.
No, because pollen is just getting rubbed up against them. They're not eating the pollen, but they're going and they're sticking their tongue and getting the nectar. So let me do a little okay, so let's say this is a flower, right? This is a flower. The nectar is going to be right in the middle of the flower. So the bee hops on the flower, gets the nectar, which is in the very middle, and it's kind of hard to miss the pollen that's around because it's on top of the flower. So they kind of can't really get the pollen without rubbing themselves on, or they can't really get the nectar without rubbing themselves on the pollen.
So they have to rub themselves on the
They don't try to rub themselves on it. They don't try to do it, but they're collecting that nectar, so it's kind of hard to avoid the pollen because it's all around where they're getting the nectar from. It's okay, we can talk about it later. Vivi?
I have a question. How do the bees make the honey for using the nectar?
I'm not sure about that. We'll have to talk about that another time.
what
Yeah.
they do.
So us people can eat nectar because bees make to get nectar to make honey. So can us people eat nectar or
I'm not sure about that. That's a
So
good
what
question.
should they
I know how bees make honey.
We'll talk about it later. Because right now we're just talking about pollination, Amari.
Well, can you get water? On top of the water, there's still.
That's kind of hard to do. And they're kind of lazy. They're not gonna try to avoid the flower when they can just land on it and just eat their food. Dom, last question, Dom.
Is there something on wet, like tomatoes and all that stuff that bees get attracted to, like that picture?
Yeah. So, Sandra, can you grab that tomato plant for me over there? Can you grab the tomato plant? It's the left one. Yep. Thank you. So this is like Fletcher was saying, this is a tomato plant. So a pollinator is attracted to the flower on the tomato plant, right? So it would get the nectar from this part right here. And it's got pollen around it. So it sticks its tongue in that little hole right there, collects the nectar, and moves on to the next one and rubs its body on that. Okay?
So there's flowers on the tomato?
Yep. Because remember, a vegetable and a fruit can't produce a vegetable and a fruit. The plant of a vegetable and a fruit can't produce any more vegetables and fruit until it produces a what? A flower, right? So those flowers, once they get pollinated, once I plant them in my backyard, and a pollinator comes by and pollinates it, it will then grow a fruit or vegetable. Because it's already got the flower on there. Okay. So so that is step 5. So step 5 is now that it has been pollinated, it can grow a fruit or a vegetable. The plant is unable to until it has been pollinated. So it's got to go through this huge process just for it to grow anything. And that's why pollinators are so important, because if we didn't have them, then we wouldn't have food. We wouldn't have food.
no potatoes? No potatoes?
Well, we would have potatoes because potatoes self-pollinate. Remember, we learned about that on day 1. We learned about that on yesterday. But we wouldn't have vegetables or fruit that need pollinators. We wouldn't have strawberries. We wouldn't have oranges. We wouldn't have watermelons or pumpkins. Yeah, we wouldn't have All right. Class. All right, I'm going to show 2 videos. One of a butterfly pollinating a plant and the other one of a bee pollinating a plant. After we're done watching these, we're going to have a little discussion, so make sure you're paying attention. Ollie, did you have a question?
Yeah, what is pollinators?
Or what?
Pollinators?
I don't know. I'm not sure about that. That's a good question. See it sticking its tongue in there? See it's looking around, looking for the hole to stick its tongue in? It's probably just a bee host.
Yeah, it's kind of looks like a caterpillar. Like you can see the
All right, hey friends. So Harper actually had a really good question. So Harper said, how does a bee know when it collects the nectar? I told her, if she's holding a hamburger, she's gonna know if she ate it because she tastes it, right? So a bee's gonna know if it collects the nectar because it's eating it. So it's gonna know if it ate the nectar because it's tasting it in their mouth, right? See, it's collecting the nectar, it's sticking its tongue. Look at that flower. All right. So, you know, the reason why farmers, now Grace, do you have a question?
I noticed on the bee one you can only see half of its body.
Half of its body? Mm-hmm. Ella?
I noticed on the bee that it goes way faster than the butterfly. Well, I don't know if it goes way faster, but we got a closer look up. We don't get to see the back of the butterfly, but when we got a closer look up, the bee was just doing this, but we didn't get a really close look up on the butterfly, so I don't really know if it went faster. But I don't think
Yeah. Amari?
why does the bee literally shake its butt when it's getting nectar and why does
It might just be the way that it's flying.
no,
Did anyone else notice anything else cool about the video? Valentina?
I think that was
Hang on, I can't hear you because I hear other people talking. What was it?
I think what was really cool about the video was because we really it's hard to see all the pollen and stuff. When we got a close up, I could see really all the pollen and I couldn't really see the nectar. How I could see all little tiny little fuzz on the flowers. Sometimes I feel the flowers and I can never feel the little fuzz.
Yeah.
So it's really cool that I got to see the little pollen get on the bees.
Yeah. And we don't really see the nectar because the nectar is so far inside the flower, and that's why the bees and the hummingbirds and the bat's tongue is so small, is because they have to fit it through this tiny hole to get in the nectar, and so we don't really see it. Dom?
What type of flower is this to be?
I'm not-
Blossom.
Yeah, apple blossom. It was an apple blossom.
Are carpenter bees pollinators?
I mean, it's a type of bee, so it probably is, but I don't want to tell you for sure yet because I don't know 100%. Bella?
My dad says woodland bees probably don't look for flowers because he says they look for moths and trees like in little holes.
Yeah. Harper?
So you know when I saw the bees have extra pollen on their legs, does that make it harder for them to fly, or is it just
Nope. Nope. All right. Okay. So farmers will actually plant flowers that they know bees are going to get attracted to, or they know pollinators are going to get attracted to. So that way, while a bee is flying around and it's pollinating these flowers, hopefully it'll go and pollinate some of the farmers' fruits and vegetables that they're growing, right? So they do that on purpose to try to get the pollinators around theirs, so that way they can produce more fruit and vegetables. Dylan?
I know that a carpenter bee is a pollinator because every time I see a bee, my mom will take like a picture of it, or I get this thing on my phone since it's an Android. There's this Google search thing, and I'll take pictures of stuff in my house, and it'll show me how much stuff costs and other things like the same thing. But one time I took a picture of a bee, and then a bee pollinating, and then a carpenter bee looks different than a honeybee or a bumblebee, because some carpenter bees have this like yellow square looking thing on like their forehead, and then
Yeah, there's a lot of different types of bees out there. And me and Miss Phillips were just talking. Me and Miss Phillips both plant gardens, and we plant certain flowers around our gardens because we know it's going to attract pollinators, and that way it'll help us grow our gardens better. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, let's go back over our I can statements one more time. I can. Identify the steps a pollinator goes through.
identify the steps a pollinator goes through
To pollinate a plant.
to pollinate a plant.
I can. Determine why pollinators are important.
Determine why pollinators are important.
I can.
I
Identify different ways the seeds can travel.
can identify different ways that seeds can travel.
All right. So go ahead and talk with your shoulder partner. What's something interesting you learned about today, or what's something that stuck with you today about today's lesson? All right. Hey, second grade. Don mentioned a great thing that he learned about today's lesson. Go ahead and share with us what you learned. Bats are pollinators. So, something that I learned was, some insects are pollinators, but some insects aren't. Like worms are not pollinators because worms don't have that long tongue that can stick in there. They can't fly, so they can't really get to flowers. So those wouldn't really be one. Things like that wouldn't be. But ones that fly and can easily get to those. Yeah. I don't want to tell you 100% no, but I don't think so. I don't think they would be. Valentina?
What I thought it was really cool, while you were talking about the worm, one thing that popped out of my brain that we
are pollinators.
Mhm.
And when they're like babies, like caterpillars, they're not pollinators. Like that's super cool about metamorphosis.
Mhm.
Like first, they're not a pollinator at all. They can't fly. They're this well. And then it doesn't. It's like a worm. You know, like a long tongue.
Mhm.
It's just like a worm. However, when it gets in the crystal, it's like
It kind of changes. It has that
it's so
metamorphosis,
cool. Like
right?
it's just pollinates have a long tongue. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Mhm. Which I didn't really know. I mean, I knew things pollinated, but I didn't know they had such a long tongue, and that's how they pollinated. I thought that was cool too. Harper?
I was like fascinated about like I never knew that bees had a tongue. I thought they would just like get their mouth and like scoop it.
Mhm. Yep. It's cool seeing that close up, right? Seeing their tongue. But
Same, like what Harvey said, I knew bees had a tongue, but I didn't know that it was like bigger than their body.
I mean, it wasn't big. I wouldn't say it was bigger than their body, but it was pretty big, right?
Yeah.
It kind of looked a little
It-
creepy.
Like it, you think it like roll it back when. Like,
Oh yeah, it's like really long. Like
yeah, so
yeah.
you have to like roll it back.
Mhm. Yep.
Especially
Well.
so I thought like I thought like bees like got pollen and stuff. I thought they had it to do like the music.
Yeah. They do a little dance.
I did not know.
Mhm. Yep. Dylan.
I don't know. I heard. I told my mom and my family that I think an ant is a pollinator because you know the food they get.
Mhm.
I feel like they like kind of use pollen for like you know like stuff with honey on it.
Mhm.
I feel like they like pollinate it or something.
Yeah. I'll have to, before our next lesson, I'll try to look up some more pollinators for you guys, and we can talk about it the next lesson.
What I thought was really fascinating was how bats are pollinators and they have really long tongues. I didn't know they had that long tongues. Because I thought bats and bees and all the pollinators that get pollen from like flowers, I did not know at all that they do they need that long of a tongue to get pollen?
Oh yeah, because I mean, you don't really see the nectar, right? And it's gotta get past, you know the video that we saw, and it had those long things coming out of the flower. It's gotta go all the way past those long things, all the way inside the middle of the flower to reach that nectar, because it's all the way down there. That's why they have to have such a long tongue.
Our like tongue is like does their tongue just stick out or is there like or do they like
It stays in their mouth.
It
and so
stays in
they
my
stick
mouth
out.
and like roll it up or something. They
I guess it rolls up. I'm not really sure. Dom?
Same thing with Dylan. I've seen ants like pick up flowers and
Mhm.
live there.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up because that might actually be true. Vance,
So I
can you wait? Wait just 1 second. Almost done. Ollie.
I used to think that bees were first of all the only pollinators and that they got pollen somehow from their stinger.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Fun fact about bees that you guys might not know is a bee is not out to get you. If it's buzzing around you, it might be because you maybe smell like a flower or is attracted to you, but it's not out to get you and sting you, because when a bee stings somebody or when a bee stings something, they die. A bee dies when it stings and it loses its stinger, so it's not out to get you. It might be attracted to you. Yeah. Amari?
Two things. A net is not a pollinator.
Interesting. Dylan?
I said two things.
Oh, I'm sorry, Amari.
And Philip said bees, if they sting you, their butts rip off.
It's not their butt, it's their stinger, and their stinger does get detached. Okay, so we're gonna go over an exit ticket today. Before we even start the exit ticket, what do we put on the top? What? Okay, so can I get somebody to read number 1 on the exit ticket, Sloan?
What are the
what are the steps the plant has to go through to become pollinated. Natalie Grace, can you read number 2 for us? Perfect. And Gabe, can you read the last one for us? It's okay, Gabe, you got it. What ways?
can a seed travel?
Perfect. All right, so I want you guys, Dawn. Okay, I want you guys to buzz back to your seats so we can work on the exercise.
So I have these things where I feel like I'm gonna faint, and could I go to the nurse because with this happening?
I'll call her on the phone and we'll see what she says. But you're not gonna faint. There's
I know,
very
but-
specific things that happen before someone faints.
I
Okay, I'll call her.
on the back.
Amari?